Hey everyone, my name is Wedge, and today we're going to look at every white card spoiled from Theros over the weekend. Also, keep in mind for any card individually spoiled, check out our spoiler series up to this point. We are going to try to go through all of these cards quickly while still giving as in-depth of an analysis as possible. Let's get to it. The first card we're going to look at is Battle-Wise Valor. For one colorless and a white, you get an instant that gives target creature +2/+2 until end of turn, and you scry one. This is a great way to start spoilers. Instant speed heroic enablers are always awesome, and for 2 mana you get a nice pump and you can scry. This is super good for limited and may actually see some standard play in heroic enabler decks. For example, I would consider playing this in a deck utilizing cards like Fabled Hero and Favored Hoplite. Chosen by Heliod is one colorless and one white for an enchant creature aura. When Chosen by Heliod enters the battlefield, draw a card. Enchanted creature gets +0/+2. The 2 mana for a +0/+2 is pretty underwhelming, but drawing cards is always relevant. Again, with cards like this, seeing play in heroic decks is possible, but I feel like the card draw might not be enough to convince me to play this when +0/+2 doesn't exactly affect the board state as significantly as I would want it to. Next, we have Decorated Griffon, 4 colorless and 1 white for a 2/3 flyer. He also lets you prevent combat damage to yourself for 2 mana per point of damage. This is a pretty cool ability. White is going back to its Samite healer roots with cards like these. Yes, it's extremely expensive for a 2/3, but in a limited environment, not having to tap the Griffon to prevent damage is pretty good. You can just take hits from a creature with Death Touch all game and not have to worry about it instead of finding ways to block it. In the right deck, this could see decent limited play, but it's too expensive for standard. Divine Verdict is the first kill spell we're going to look at. 3 colorless and 1 white for an instant that lets you destroy target attacking or blocking creature. This is pretty bomb and limited, as most white kill spells tend to be. Standard playability is difficult, but honestly not terrible. We've seen so much destruction in black and red, white is lacking a little bit. I don't think this will be huge in standard, but if someone ran a copy or two, I really wouldn't be that surprised. Pharaoh's Warden is 3 colorless and 1 white for a 1/2, and when you tap it, tap target creature with power 3 or less. This ability is pretty good, but the cost on the cleric is way too high for it. The main problem is that in a limited environment, especially with heroic, 3 power may not be a huge barrier to get over. For 4 mana with a 1/2 body, this seems a bit too high costed for what you get. Evangel of Heliod is a 4 colorless 2 white 1/3. Whenever the Evangel enters the battlefield, put a number of 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield equal to your devotion to white. This is reminiscent of Aberrant Overlord without the sacrificing creatures, except for one thing. He's a 1/3, 6 mana for a puny body but a decent ability. In limited, this guy is going to wreck house. Creature generation is always strong there, and I see no reason to think this guy won't create mass soldiers with startling efficiency. Hopeful Eidolon is a 1 white mana 1/1 with a bestow cost of 4. It or enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and lifelink. 4 mana may seem like a lot here, but I actually like this card. +1/+1 may not be gigantic, but on a heroic creature with a good trigger, you're basically getting +2/+2 and lifelink for 4 mana, and then another creature after this one dies. I like Bestow a lot more than most people, and I can see it leading to a lot of 2-for-1s by triggering heroic bonuses, especially with cheaper Bestow cards like this. Lagana Band Elder is a 2 colorless 1 white 3/2. When the Elder enters the battlefield, if you control an enchantment, you gain 3 life. I like this card just for the fact that it's a 3/2. We have seen so many defensive white creatures that this is a breath of fresh air. The ability is situational overall, but in limited play, I don't think it will be as situational. This could be a nice alternative to Centaur Healer, which we all know is crazy good in limited. Last Breath is 1 colorless and a white for an instant that exiles target creature with power 2 or less. Its controller gains 4 life. It's important to note this card was printed in both Mercadian Masks and Shadowmoor. That's how much they loved it, and not going to lie to you, I love it right now. If someone slams Scavenging Ooze on turn 2, Last Breath has it under control. This is pretty decent for limited, but I can really see this in standard or even modern decks maybe. Yes, there are a million removal spells in modern, but this guy specifically targets things like Dark Confidant, Deathrite Shaman, and the Ooze. One thing's for sure, your opponent wouldn't see it coming. Leonin Snarecaster is a 2-mana 2/1, and when it enters the battlefield, you may tap target creature. This is a nice pseudo-combat trick when you are trying to get through an enemy to maybe trigger a whenever this deals combat damage to your opponent ability. Decent in limited, doubt it'll see standard play. Ray of Disillusion is 3 mana for an instant that lets you destroy target enchantment and you gain 3 life. In limited play, this card is nice. It helps stem the bleeding and remove something that is assuredly annoying. Since most white decks are going to be with another color, I believe there is better enchantment destruction to work with in most other colors, so I'm not sure if this will see standard play outside of maybe a few control strategies that want to sideboard heavily against an enchantment-based aggressive deck. Scholar of Athreus is a 3-mana 1/4. For 2 colorless and 1 black, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Definitely has potential for EDH, however, limited environments wouldn't hate this guy either. A 1/4 is a strong blocker, and mana tends to be abundant mid to late game. This could be a good way to win a war of attrition with a locked board state. Citizen Battle Priest is a 2-mana 1/3. Whenever you cast a spell that targets the priest, you gain 2 life. I'm not sure how to feel about this card. 2 mana for a 1/3 isn't terrible, but we've seen stronger heroic abilities. I could see this maybe finding a place in a limited strategy, but you would think that your heroic enablers could be better utilized somewhere else unless you're in a pinch for some quick life. Citizen Griffon is a 5-mana 3/2 flyer. For 2 colorless and 2 green, the Griffon gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and you can only activate this ability once each turn. 5 mana for a 3/2 flyer isn't ideal, and 4 mana to pump it isn't either. However, if you play this guy, untap with him, and have the necessary colors open, you can make a 5/4 flying beatstick. In limited play, a flyer with 5 power tends to do crazy things. Give him a bestow card or 2, he could get dumb really quickly. This will see limited play in the right Selesnya deck. Silent Artisan is 5 mana for a 3/5. There isn't much to say here because the entire text box is filled with flavor text. Vanilla creatures are in every set, so this is fine, but he's no long legs. Traveling Philosopher is a 2-mana 2/2. I know he may look like a human advisor, but he's a bear. He has all the bear qualities. He's a bear! Bears are good in limited. Draft some bears. The last white card spoiled over the weekend is Yoked Ox. 1 white mana for a 0/4. Oxen are hysterical, and this guy's power and toughness make me laugh. Knowing that I am a control player, you can bet I'll draft this card in my inevitably annoying blue-white scry draw bestow win deck. In all seriousness though, don't underestimate walls. They've existed in Magic forever and they have good reason to. A 0/4 stops attackers for a while, especially when you lay them down turn 1. He's like Wall of Omens, but doesn't draw a card. While that isn't great obviously, he really isn't that bad. Don't overlook him if you really need creatures in your deck. That's it for the rest of the white cards in Theros. How do you think the color turned out? Personally, I think there is more flavor here than you can shake a stick at. Also, my favorite white card spoiled this past weekend is the Last Breath. Easily. That card is a lot better than people think, even if it doesn't necessarily hit limited fatties. I'd love to hear what you guys like or dislike in Theros in regards to white cards. As always, subscribe below for the latest and most reliable spoiler information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.